Hey guys, it's Connor and welcome back to my channel, The Closet. Now, if it's the first time you're joining me today, welcome. Please like and subscribe my channel, hit the subscribe button and the bell there so you're alerted every time I release a new video. Now, today's topic was obviously inevitable for me, Hermes leathers. Everybody wants to know what's the best leather, will this be good for my lifestyle? How will this wear over in the long run? So I'm going to speak about all of those things today. Now, Hermes is famous for the leathers they use. They have been for over 100 years, and it's more the technique and the rigorous tanning process that they actually do that gives the leather its characteristics. Now, when compared to things like Chanel and Louis Vuitton, Hermes, honestly, they're in a league of their own, and you can't really compare the two because the range of leathers that Hermes actually brings out and the colors that they dye their leathers in, it's incomparable to any other brand. Now, a question I get asked a lot by customers of Conrad's Closet or people who are new to the brand is, how does this leather work? What are some things to look out for? Pros and cons, and will it suit my lifestyle? And all of those sort of valid questions that you probably should be asking when you're shopping for an Hermes item in leather. Now, obviously leather has a million different characteristics, and each leather that Hermes uses has, its own sets of pros and cons, and they're really things that you should know when purchasing. Now, if you were to Google these questions, or if you were to post on a Facebook group or the Purse forum, you will be bombarded with questions and answers from people, a lot of them facts, but also a lot of them opinions of people who have had experiences with the leather. Now, while this is good, it can be really, really overwhelming. So hopefully in this video, I'm able to provide a very general overview of the most common leathers that Hermes uses, especially in their small leather goods, leather jewelry, and bags. Now, the leathers I'm going to be talking about today are the common leathers that you'll find with most Hermes small leather goods, bags, and leather jewelry. They are Togo, Clemence, Evercolor, Swift, Epsom, and Chevelle. Now, I picked these leathers because you will find them with most Hermes items, especially on the cheaper side that most people like myself buy, like, your Calvi card cases, Bastias, and all those sorts of things. Now, unfortunately, I do not have examples of all of the leathers that I'm going to be talking about today right here. However, I have used them all before, and I've sold a lot of them through my business, Conrad's Closet, so I know exactly what they feel like, how they look, and how they wear. So I'm going to be including photos of the ones I don't have here right now to give you a better, understanding of what they look like, with pictures of the grains up close so you can see, the characteristics and the sheens. Now, something I just want to point out, that all leathers, whether they're with Oroton, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, they all have characteristics that you cannot change and you have to accept when you're purchasing them. Now, this can be things like prone to slouching, structure, scratch resistance, water resistance, the size of the grain, the sheen, all of these things. So if you do not like that about a certain leather, there is nothing you can do about it, and do not buy a leather with those characteristics if it's something that you cannot stand. I do often see people thinking that their bag that is prone to slouching is going to get better with time, or they're shocked when it slouches, where everybody says, if you do not like slouching leather, do not purchase this, and then they purchase it and it slouches. There's nothing that can be done. That is just what happens, and it is leather at the end of the day. Also, I just wanted to touch on the term scratch resistant leather, because a lot of people will refer to leathers as being scratch resistant, and it sets this kind of precedence that all leathers with that title are prone to not getting scratched, so you can bump it, scratch it with your keys and all of those things, and it's just not true. Leather is like skin, and if you scratch it hard enough, it will scratch. Now, obviously there are leathers that are a lot less prone to scratches, and in my opinion, I believe a leather is, titled scratch resistant, or it's referred to as scratch resistant by people. That means that you can get your normal average fingers and go like that to it, and there will not be any scratches. You can rub your fingers and your nails over the grain and you will not scratch the bag. That does not mean you can get your pair of car keys and go like this all around the leather, or Freddy Krueger nails and just run it through, because I do see people talk about, I only gently rubbed my 6-inch acrylic nails across the bag and it's scratched, or I only bumped it slightly against the concrete wall and it's scratched. Well, leather is like skin, so imagine if your elbow was to bump into everything and scratch everything, it'll be grazed, and it is the exact same thing. The only difference is with your elbow, if that does happen, your elbow will repair itself, your bag will not repair itself. So hopefully that clears things up with the scratch resistant terms that people refer to with leathers. Now the first leather I'm going to be talking about is Clemence leather. Now this leather is very common with Hermes items such as the Hermes Gypsier, the Evelyn and the Picatin bag. Now the reason why this leather is so common is because firstly it's very readily available for the leather tanneries in France to use, and secondly a lot of its characteristics suit the average person's lifestyle. Now I'm going to be showing it on an Evelyn Mini in the TPM size. This leather has quite a large grain, but it's not very deep. So I'll show you. If you can see, like the grain is quite large, but it's not set really deep into the leather. It's almost like it's just floating on top. It's very, very, very soft. It's quite slouchy. Now this leather will slouch. So if you were somebody who likes super structured bags, or you hate when the leather over time gets that kind of soft, relaxed look to it, it probably isn't the leather for you. Now, I like this leather personally because it is casual, and I do like that casual look with bags. And another big tick winner for it is it's scratch resistant. Now, obviously, as I said before, it's not key proof, but you know, you can go like this over it and it's not going to scratch. It's not going to leave marks from your fingers, and it is very forgiving too. If you happen to scuff the corners or you do accidentally damage the leather, it is very, very good to send it to the Hermes spa because they can repair it quite easily, which is always reassuring to know when you've spent so much money on a bag that if you do have that, you know, moment where you've, you know, scuffed it against a wall, it's not horror, it's not like the worst day of your life because it can be repaired. Now, the second leather I'm going to be talking about is Togo. Now, unfortunately, I do not have a bag in Togo. I wish I did, but you will find Togo a lot on Hermes belts. Now, I'll show you it up close. Now, Togo leather is very, very common with Hermes bags such as Birkins and Kellys because it is quite lightweight. Also, it's scratch resistant, and it does have, like, this is one of my all-time favorite characteristics of this leather, and it's probably one of my most favorite leathers, is because on some bags you will see like a vein that runs through the bag, and it's a characteristic of the leather. Now, it doesn't appear in every single Togo leather bag because obviously the leather is like a skin, so you pretty much get what you get when it comes out. Now, some people like the vein, some people don't. I love it because I think it is so cool. I love it how it just, I don't know, something about it I just really like, but it's a really lightweight leather and it doesn't slouch as much as Clemence. Now, the bigger the bag, unfortunately, it will slouch over time, but if you're talking about your common sizes like your Birkin 30s or your Birkin 25s, or there's some other like men's messenger bags that Togo's done in as well, it won't slouch if you look after it. Now, the grain on the leather is it's not like floating on top like I referred to with Clemence. It's more of a deep set kind of grain, but the grains are smaller. So it's not as wide as Clemence in the size of the grains, but it's more deeply set. Don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense in my mind, but I'll try and show you. When you rub your finger over it, it won't scratch as well, won't leave marks, which is also really, really, really good. And like Clemence, it is quite forgiving when you have to repair it at the Hermes spa as well. The next leather I'm going to be talking about is Swift leather. Now, this leather is very common with like the Constance bag, and it's also very common to be lined inside of the Constance bags as well. Now, this leather, you'll find it in smaller sized Kelly bags, and people have a love-hate relationship with Swift. Now, the reason why that is because the leather is referred to as a quite delicate leather in terms of if you scratch it with your fingernails like I did with the other leathers, it'll leave a scratch. Now, depending on the type of person you are, that can really, really bother you, and I do get that because it doesn't always look good having, you know, like fingernail scratches. But like on the other side, it does show that your bag's loved and used, and I really do like that kind of, you know, vibe it gives to the bag. Now, if you speak to somebody who does own a bag in Swift, they will actually tell you it's not as delicate as you would think. Now my friend Mel, who has a YouTube channel, Purse on Fleek, I'll put the link down below. She owns a Kelly in Swift Leather, and she did a video when she first purchased the bag, and then she did a video a year on, and I was really impressed with how it's turned out, and you know, how it's aged and all those things. Now, she's not somebody who babies her bags, and I know her personally, so it was quite reassuring to watch that video, especially if you are looking at like a Kelly bag on the pre-loved market and it's in Swift. Now, I obviously do not have a bag in Swift, but I recently purchased a CDC in the 24 size, and I opted to have Swift Leather because they also had an Epsom. Now, the reason I picked Swift Leather is because it's so luxurious. It's very soft to touch. It's almost like rubbing your hands through butter, and it has a very mild grain to it. Now, obviously the grain in leather, the bigger the grain or the more significant the grain, the more forgiving it is to scratches because it hides it. So because this leather is quite soft, I wouldn't run my fingers over it because it'll show the scratches. This leather also has a very it's almost like an iridescent look to it because it's quite shiny, but it's a very luxurious leather, and to me it's like, if I were to get a Kelly in a smaller bag, I would opt to have it in Swift Leather. Now, another huge thing I love about Swift Leather is its ability to hold Hermes dyes. Now, if you've seen a Birkin in a huge, bright, bold color like Blue Electric in Swift Leather, you know exactly what I'm talking about if you were to compare it to a different type of leather. It is so vibrant, and it just pops out of itself. No other Hermes leather really does it as well as Swift in that respect. So that is another huge thing I love about the leather that is quite significant and should really aid your decision when buying something in that type of leather. Especially if you like pops of color, you want your bag to stand out, I would highly recommend Swift Leather for that purpose. Now, while I'm talking about Swift, I also want to talk about a very similar leather called Evercolor. Now, Evercolor is quite popular with bags like the Hermes Toolbox, and more recently they've brought it out in the Bastia coin purses. Now, it is a very soft leather, and it's super similar to Swift. However, one of its main differences is that it has a larger grain to it. It's not as flat and shiny as, is that a word? Shiny as Swift. Now, the grain obviously is not huge. It's very subtle, but it is there. So for people who feel like Swift might not be as forgiving to them, or they know that they just don't want the scratches from everyday use, Evercolor is a much better option because that grain is a lot more forgiving. It also does hold the dye really well like Swift, so you will find Evercolor in very bright colors like blue Zanzibar, and like lots of bright reds as well. Now, the leather is quite lightweight as well, and it can also be repaired very easily at the Hermes spa. The next leather I want to talk about is Chevelle Leather, and I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. But Chevelle Leather has become increasingly popular with people placing special order bags with Hermes. Now, this leather comes from the goat. It's a lightweight goat skin, and it's very scratch resistant. Probably the most scratch resistant if I were to, compare it to other Hermes leathers. It's super lightweight. It's got a very high sheen. It's very shiny, and it's got a very interesting grain pattern that runs through it. It's very vertical and squiggly. I don't know. But what I've noticed with Chevelle is when I saw photos of it, online and with people with their bags, I kind of didn't like it at first, and I thought, oh, I don't really know if I like that leather. It just looks a bit strange. But in person, I don't know if it's just me, but I found that in person it looks like 100% better than what it does in photos. And I really don't know why, and I still can't figure it out. But I love this leather. I got a Bastia in Chevelle leather, and it was light as air. You could, run your fingers over it, whatever. And it's super, it's very casual, but it's very practical at the same time, and I really love it. So I don't have anything in Chevelle, but I will upload photos so you can see what I'm talking about. But if you do own something in that leather, I hope you understand what I mean when it just looks different in real life. Now, the last leather I'm going to be talking about is Epsom. And Epsom leather is quite controversial within the Hermes world because the grain that is applied to it is actually artificial. Now, it is a very common leather, and you'll find it in Calbies, you'll find it in Bastia coin purses, you'll find it in Constance bags, and you will most certainly find it with the Kelly Cellier bag. Now, I honestly, heart on heart, do like Epsom leather, and if I had all the money in the world, I would get a Birkin in Epsom leather. Now, the biggest pro for Epsom leather is it's very, very structured. It stands upright and it will not slouch. Now, people say that this leather is water resistant, but I can assure you it's actually not. No leather is water resistant, and if you leave water on it long enough, it will blister. The water will eventually penetrate through the coating and it will blister, and it's just how it is. Now, it's probably more forgiving in the term that if you get caught in the rain with an Epsom bag, you will have more time to go home or get a cloth and dry it, as opposed to like Clement's leather, where if you do get caught in the rain, it will swell very, very, very quickly, and I don't know how easily that damage can be fixed. I can't imagine it being an easy thing. So no, Epsom is not waterproof like you will commonly see on purse forum threads, but it is a lot more forgiving if you do get caught in the rain, and you do have a lot more time to rectify it. Now, one of the biggest things you will read about Epsom leather is it's not a real leather, it's fake, it's plasticky, it looks cheap, and it damages Hermès' brand because all of the other leathers are so luxurious and they've got this beautiful pebbled look, and then they have Epsom and it just looks like that. I don't agree with that, because Epsom leather is a leather and it's called that for a reason. Although it has gone through this tanning process where its heat stamped grain is applied, it's still a leather underneath, and you either love it or you hate it, but I don't think it devalues the brand in any way. It's just a different variety and it's out there for people to use whether they like it. Now, the only thing I do not like about Epsom leather, which if you look on YouTube, you'll find people who have posted about this and you'll read about it online, is that if you scratch an Epsom leather bag, it is super hard for it to be repaired. Imagine if you got a piece of paper and you laminated it through a laminator, and then you kept scuffing at that piece of paper to the point where the laminated part of the plastic had filled up, and then you would actually damage the paper underneath. You can't re-laminate the piece of paper because you're always going to see the mark. So that kind of vision is always in my head if I do scratch an Epsom leather bag, because the heat stamp is applied over the leather. It's set as one piece, so it can be very, very, very tricky to repair. That being said, I have seen the leather surgeons post a video on repairing Epsom bag. It was either a video or they posted like photos of it, and honestly, it looked brand new and I couldn't even tell where it had been repaired. But I also have seen instances where people have sent their Epsom leather damaged bag to the Hermès spa, they've gotten it back, and the repair process just isn't really that great. So it can be quite hit and miss in that respect, but at the same time, you do need to be careful with your bags, and you do need to always be diligent when you're wearing them and not knock them around, keeping that in mind. So knowing that, would I put an Epsom bag in my collection? Absolutely. I know that it can scratch, and I know it doesn't always look great once it has been scratched, but I already know that, and I would still rather have a structured bag in my collection than worrying about what could potentially happen if I damage the bag. Having a structured bag is such a different vibe, and it adds a lot more depth to your collection, I feel, so it's a trade-off that I would be willing to make. So guys, thank you so much for watching my video. I really hope it has aided anyone who is looking at purchasing something in an Hermès leather, or they're not too sure about it. I hope this guide has been, helpful, and if you have any more questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I'm more than happy to get back to you or offer advice, or if you have any other topics you'd like me to do videos on, please reach out, post it in the comments, contact me via Instagram or Facebook, and I'm more than happy to get back to you. But thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.